Something unprecedented is brewing behind closed doors in professional basketball. And it all traces back to a split-second moment that changed the tone of an entire league season. When millions of new eyes turned their attention to the women's game, nobody anticipated that the biggest story wouldn't just be high-scoring rookies or broken records, but a bitter physical feud that escalated beyond normal competitive boundaries. The tension reached an absolute boiling point during a high-stakes playoff matchup where a sequence of hard contact left the league's biggest attraction visually bruised and fans demanding immediate accountability. When a star player takes a direct blow to the face without a call on the floor, it ceases to be just another defensive possession and transforms into a full-scale executive crisis. What transpired on that court opened up a massive debate about player safety, targeted aggression, and whether high-ranking basketball authorities were finally ready to draw an uncrossable line in the sand. But that wasn't the whole story, because the events leading up to this moment reveal a far deeper conflict that had been simmering for months. The meteoric rise of the WNBA over the past year has been nothing short of a cultural phenomenon, bringing unprecedented television ratings, sold-out arenas, and massive corporate sponsorships. At the center of this incredible surge was Caitlin Clark, whose deep three-pointers and viral passing ability captivated audiences around the world and completely transformed the economic reality of the league. However, with unprecedented fame came intense media scrutiny and a target on the rookie's back, as veteran players prepared to physically test her resilience every single night. The line between traditional physical basketball defense and aggressive non-basketball plays quickly began to blur, creating a volatile atmosphere across the league. Every game became a high-stakes event where physical contact was analyzed frame by millions of passionate fans online. The stage was set for a massive collision of eras, but nobody expected it to turn as hostile as it did. The atmosphere inside the arena was electric as the postseason kicked off. But it took less than one quarter of play for total chaos to erupt on the floor. DiJonai Carrington locked into her defensive assignment with aggressive intensity, but as she reached across to swipe at the ball, her hand dragged directly across Caitlin Clark's face, striking her square in the eye. Clark dropped to the hardwood in visible pain, clutching her face while play continued uninterrupted, as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. Replays quickly began circulating across social media in real time, zoomed in on the exact frame of contact, showing the physical impact that left the star guard with a prominent black eye for the remainder of the game. Fans were utterly stunned, not just by the contact itself, but by the complete absence of a whistle from the officiating crew standing mere feet away. The narrative exploded instantaneously, with viewers questioning whether this was a routine basketball play gone wrong, or something much more deliberate. As the bruise began to darken around Clark's eye, the internet erupted into chaos, and what happened next would shock everyone. As the post-game press conferences began, the reaction from the basketball community was split down the middle, creating a rift that only amplified the drama. Critics argued that Carrington's movement showed an unnatural swipe across the face area, pointing out that defending a player shouldn't involve high-risk contact above the shoulders. On the other side, defenders claimed that fast-paced basketball inherently carries physical risks, and that misjudging a steal attempt is a common occurrence on any given night. However, when footage emerged from a separate angle showing Carrington allegedly laughing and imitating the movement on the bench shortly after, the public perception shifted dramatically. What could have been written off as an accidental collision suddenly looked like a calculated psychological strategy designed to intimidate the league's top talent. The narrative quickly transformed from a simple missed foul into an allegation of unsportsmanlike behavior that demanded direct action from top executives. The media circus was officially in full swing. But the drama was only getting started. To make matters worse, this wasn't the only contentious encounter between Carrington and Clark during the game, as a second dirty foul sequence raised the stakes even higher. Later in the contest, as Clark attempted to push the pace in transition, Carrington delivered a hard body bump that sent the rookie flying off balance and crashing hard into the hardwood. The sheer force of the collision was completely unnecessary for a perimeter play, leaving fans and analysts questioning why such excessive physical force was being allowed without immediate referee intervention. The combination of the early eye strike and the subsequent hard floor crash painted a troubling picture of repeated targeted physicality designed to knock the league's brightest star out of her rhythm. Analysts on national sports networks openly debated whether these actions crossed the threshold into dirty play, demanding that league authorities intervene before someone suffered a career-altering injury. The heat on Carrington was reaching a fever pitch, but what happened off the court would push things over the edge. To truly understand why this specific moment exploded into a national controversy, you have to look at the escalating history between these two players throughout the regular season. Earlier in the year, Carrington had already drawn heat for physical bumps and animated on-court gestures that clearly aimed to get under the rookie's skin. Carrington has always embraced a physical-first defensive identity, earning respect for her grit. But critics started noticing a persistent pattern every time she faced off against Indiana. Whenever the two teams met, the energy shifted from standard competitive basketball to a personal battleground where every play carried an underlying threat of hard contact. Beyond the hardwood, subtle social media posts and shade thrown back and forth created a narrative of genuine animosity that fans followed like a dramatic television series. While physical rivalries have historically built the foundation of basketball legends, modern sports management operates under strict guidelines regarding player protection and brand safety. When physical plays start risking the health of marquee players who generate millions in revenue, the conversation shifts from the court to executive boardrooms. And what happened next would send shockwaves through the entire organization. While the NBA has its own leadership team, the overarching shadow of NBA Commissioner Adam Silver and the broader basketball hierarchy cannot be ignored when multi-million-dollar television deals and global viewership are at risk. Silver has spent decades building a global ecosystem that prioritizes star power, clean marketing, and high-level entertainment value, minimizing anything that looks like intentional physical harm. Rumors quickly began circulating that top-level league officials were deeply uncomfortable with how the product was being perceived on national television. When international headlines highlight black eyes and uncalled hits, rather than incredible passes and clutch shots, the long-term commercial viability of the league takes a direct hit. Industry insiders began speculating that high-level executive meetings took place behind closed doors, emphasizing that the era of unpunished hard fouls was officially coming to a close. The pressure on league executives was mounting fast, but the officials on the floor were about to face their own reckoning. The officiating crew during that pivotal game found themselves under intense fire from commentators, former players, and furious fans who demanded explanations for the missed calls. Referees are tasked with maintaining game control, yet allowing physical contact of that severity to go unpunished sets a dangerous precedent for future matchups. When a defender makes high contact with a shooter's head, standard protocol dictates an immediate review for a potential flagrant foul. Yet, the whistle remained completely silent. This failure to review the play fueled widespread allegations of incompetence and even bias, with fans claiming that veteran players were being given free passes to physically break down high-profile rookies. The lack of in-game discipline effectively forced league authorities to evaluate secondary disciplinary actions behind closed doors to restore order. If the refs weren't going to blow the whistle during the game, the front office would have to step in after the final buzzer sounded. But the true extent of the planned consequences was far bigger than anyone anticipated. Speculation reached an all-time high when reports hinted at internal discussions regarding potential suspensions, heavy fines, and strict policy overhauls for repeat offenders of hard physical fouls. While an outright permanent ban from playing again is an extreme measure rarely executed in professional sports without severe legal violations, the threat of indefinite suspensions and heavy financial penalties became very real topics of conversation. Executives recognized that if players felt they could inflict physical damage on our key superstars without severe repercussions, the integrity of the game would completely collapse. Discussions centered around implementing stricter flagrant foul criteria and mandating automatic league office reviews for any contact above the shoulders, regardless of whether a whistle was blown on the floor. The idea that Adam Silver and league officials could refuse to players step back on the floor without strict safety pledges sent a clear message across the entire basketball landscape. For Carrington, finding herself at the center of these systemic rule changes meant her every move on the court would now be scrutinized under a powerful microscope. The league was ready to make an example to protect its future. But that wasn't the whole story. The public reaction to the controversy exposed a massive divide in how sports fans view physical play in modern basketball. Purists argued that physical defense and psychological warfare have always been vital components of championship basketball, pointing to historical rivalries where hard fouls were part of the game's DNA. However, modern audiences expect modern athletic safety standards, arguing that deliberate or reckless physical contact holds the sport back from reaching mainstream commercial success. Social media platforms became absolute battlegrounds, with fans dissecting every frame of Carrington's plays, analyzing her hand movements, eye contact, and post-play reactions down to the millisecond. Carrington herself addressed the online hostility, emphasizing that her intent is always to play hard defensive basketball, and that internet outrage often distorts on-court reality. Yet, regardless of intent, the court of public opinion had already delivered its verdict, putting tremendous pressure on league officials to act decisively. The atmosphere surrounding every future matchup was forever altered. The economic realities of modern sports entertainment mean that league leadership must balance authentic athletic competition with the protection of key financial assets. Caitlin Clark's arrival brought unprecedented corporate sponsorship deals, record-breaking broadcast rights negotiations, and a massive influx of merchandise sales that benefited every franchise across the league. When a player, whose draw brings in millions of dollars in revenue, is subjected to non-basketball hits that carry injury risks, corporate partners take notice. Sponsors do not want their brand associated with unpunished violence on the court. Nor do broadcast networks want their flagship star sitting on the bench with severe injuries caused by unnecessary physical plays. High-level executives understand that protecting key marquee talent isn't about giving them special treatment on the stat sheet, but ensuring they can actually play without fearing reckless physical harm. This commercial reality created an environment where league officials had no choice but to examine whether certain players needed to be held to a far higher standard of accountability. As rumors of potential executive intervention grew louder, players across the league began weighing in on the escalating debate, exposing deep divisions within the Players Association itself. Some veteran players voiced frustration over what they perceived as special media protection for rookies, arguing that physical play is an integral rite of passage for anyone entering the professional ranks. Others acknowledged that certain physical boundaries had been crossed, and that maintaining professional decorum was essential for the growth of the women's game. The internal debate created palpable tension during league meetings, as players navigated the fine line between defending their union sisters and recognizing the immense financial tide lifting all their salaries. The debate was no longer just about two players on one court. It had evolved into a foundational discussion about the identity, future, and ethics of the entire league. In the days following the game, media outlets subjected the footage to exhaustive breakdown analysis, comparing Carrington's hand trajectory to standard defensive positioning during perimeter steals. Sports biomechanics experts and veteran basketball analysts weighed in, pointing out that natural reaching motions rarely result in full hand contact with an opponent's face, unless there's a clear breakdown in spatial discipline or excessive force applied. The visual evidence of Clark playing through clear eye trauma served as a continuous talking point on national sports debate shows, keeping the pressure on league officials to issue an official statement or retrospective penalty. Even as secondary news stories broke, the persistent viral clip ensured that the narrative around the two dirty fouls remained at the forefront of sports media coverage. The constant media pressure meant that swept under the rug solutions were completely off the table. Behind the scenes, team management from both organizations found themselves caught in a difficult position, managing media appearances while preparing their rosters for upcoming games amidst intense public scrutiny. The Indiana Fever organization had to advocate for player safety through official league channels, without appearing as though they were complaining about routine physical playoff basketball. Meanwhile, the Connecticut Sun defense had to shield Carrington from extreme social media vitriol, while quietly counseling her on avoiding high-risk defensive mechanics that could trigger league suspensions. Coaches held film sessions specifically focused on defensive hand placement and emotion management, recognizing that another physical incident would result in immediate, severe league punishment. The operational reality inside both locker rooms was forever altered by the intense national focus on their personal rivalry. The role of social media in amplifying this rivalry cannot be overstated, as short video clips, aggressive comment threads, and fan-made compilations created a continuous news cycle that drove public outrage to unprecedented levels. Algorithms prioritized controversial physical plays, ensuring that millions of users who had never previously watched a full basketball game were suddenly exposed to the exact frame of Carrington's hand striking Clark's face. This viral echo chamber transformed a sports disagreement into a broader cultural war over fairness, sportsmanship, and media bias. Public pressure mounted to the point where any decision made by league leadership would be analyzed by millions of keyboard judges ready to debate the outcome. The digital landscape had taken control of the narrative, forcing traditional sports organizations to react at light speed to preserve their public reputation. When looking back at previous disciplinary precedents across professional basketball, leagues have historically used severe financial penalties and multi-game suspensions to curb dangerous on-court behaviors. Historical examples in other leagues show that when physical plays begin targeting specific marquee superstars, executives quickly amend rule enforcement to protect the entertainment value of the sport. While an absolute permanent ban remains in extreme measures reserved for catastrophic integrity violations, executive authority routinely bench or suspend players who repeatedly cross the line of safe play. The implicit threat that Adam Silver and league officers could suspend a player indefinitely until behavioral guarantees were met proved to be a powerful deterrent across the entire league. The message was clear. No single player's defensive style would be allowed to jeopardize the health of the league's overall brand. The broader impact of this controversy has already begun reshaping how referees officiate physical play across the league, with zero-tolerance policies being applied to contact near the head and neck area. Officiating crews now initiate instant replay reviews at the slightest hint of high contact, ensuring that players who engage in reckless swipes face immediate flagrant fouls.